9. Well, it's been called the ultimate cold case. Who the heck killed Jesus? Well, one man who's off to find out, or has he's found out, is Bryan Bruce. He's TV1's The Investigator. You might remember him from that series. And in a wee documentary that screens Sunday evening, we get to the bottom of who killed Jesus. Bryan Bruce joins me this morning. Morning, Bryan.
Morning, Glenn. How are you?
Very well, thank you. How do you get onto this case? As they say, the ultimate cold case. It's certainly a massive one to strap on.
Well, I've been studying this since I was at university. I did my master's degree in philosophy, and some of the papers I did were the history of Christian thought and the quest for the historical Jesus. So I won't tell you how old I am, but my interest in this particular topic goes back about three decades.
Are you a religious man?
When I was doing the second series of The Investigator, I suddenly thought to myself, what would the ultimate cold case be? And I came up with Jesus of Nazareth.
Are you a religious man?
In what sense?
Well, do you believe in Christ?
That's my problem. I think I'm very interested in Jesus of Nazareth as a man. I have a real problem with Jesus the Christ, the Son of God.
Okay.
No, the answer is no, I don't think that Jesus was the Son of God.
Okay. So this has taken you overseas. This has taken you to the source of where it all happened many, many, many years ago. I guess you would have to believe that the man himself existed in the first place, yeah?
There is some argument from some people that he never existed, but I think the historical evidence, the one thing that we do know pretty much for sure, is that a man called Jesus from Nazareth was crucified under the regime of Pontius Pilate. Very little else do we know. Perhaps we know the next most likely historic fact is that he was baptized by John the Baptist, and that he was a follower of John the Baptist before he started his own ministry. The rest of it is up for grabs. How do we know that he existed? Well, he's in Josephus, the first century historian who wrote a couple of massive volumes about the history of the Jews. That's fairly reliable, but not exactly reliable. He's in Philo. There's mention of Pilate and Philo of Alexandria, but probably one of the most interesting references to Jesus is in one of the books associated with the Talmud, the Jewish Talmud. You can't tinker too much with the Jewish books, and Jesus makes an appearance in there.
Many people would say, look, you just need to read the Bible. It's all in there, the full story.
Yes. What's your point?
Well, I guess, to a lot of people, they would say, look, don't go digging too far, because there is the good word, the good book, tells the full story. We don't want you digging.
Well, for to do that would be to wipe off 200 and maybe 250 years of biblical scholarship. With this, the idea of examining the Gospels as to whether they were accurate and whether they were good historical documents began a couple of hundred years ago, and David Strauss, who first started this in, I think, 1835, if memory serves, lost his job at the university for suggesting that the Gospels might be inconsistent. And they use a method called parallel analysis, and that's where you put the various verses next to each other, and lo and behold, you discover they're not exactly the same. In fact, there are big differences between what the four Gospel writers have said about this incident. These various incidents in Jesus' life. And so that was the beginning of it a couple of hundred years ago.
So in order to understand his death, of course, you had to find out about the man himself, right down to what he looked like.
Yes.
Does he look like the bearded, classical, sort of pictures of Jesus that we normally see?
You mean the tall blonde Aryan man with the blue eyes,
yeah,
and the stunning good equine nose and all of that,
with his palms open,
Well, there's been a lot of pictures sold of that Jesus, and they're all wrong. I interviewed Professor Hershkovitz, who is at the University of Tel Aviv, and he is a specialist in first century archaeology in Galilee. And in the documentary, you'll hear him talk about what Jesus might have looked like. We don't know what Jesus looked like exactly, but the chances are he was about 5'1", 5'2". He's quite a short fellow by today's standards. He had a round face, dark curly hair, dark eyes, olive skin. He would surprise the look of if you met Jesus from Nazareth, you'd be very surprised, I think, about what he actually looked like.
He looked like a Bedouin man.
I guess so. Yes, he was. He was certainly from the more from the Arabic line. Yeah.
But he certainly wasn't black, and not a woman. Right?
Probably not. I think probably not.
Okay.
No. But he lived with his mother until he was 35, apparently.
Yeah. Did he? Really?
Well, I mean, that's what the Gospels say.
Yeah, I suppose so, yeah. I never thought about it like that. That's pretty strange, isn't it?
You date a man who lived with his mother till he was 35, I don't know.
Yeah. Now, the Jews have copped it over the many centuries, haven't they?
Yes.
I mean, without giving your whole documentary and the book away, because people should really see the show on Sunday, should they have the full blame?
Oh, no. I argue that they shouldn't get any of the blame whatsoever, and I say that the whole story about the midnight trial and all of that, and the Barabbas event of calling out for Barabbas rather than Jesus, is a nonsense. And the Pope actually came out and agreed with me halfway through making this documentary. He published a book in Easter of this year, saying that he didn't think that the Jewish people as a whole were responsible for the death of Jesus. And to do that, it seems to me that you have to say, well, the Barabbas event never happened. And I think there's no reason to think that the Barabbas event ever happened. The Romans never, ever had an amnesty for political prisoners.
Right.
There's no. What you have to do is you have to realize that what I've done is a historical study, not a theological study. I've done a historical study, and so when you're doing a historical study, you go, well, this document says this. Is there any other corroboration for this? Can I go and find another document that says the same thing? And if you do, then you go, well, maybe that happened. But of course, the Gospels, which are written 40 to 100 years after 40 to 60 years after Jesus' death, aren't terribly reliable, because these guys are not eyewitnesses. These writers are not eyewitnesses. They're writing down what other people said they thought they might have heard from somebody else.
Do you risk getting into religious debates when investigating these types of matters? Oh,
of course you do, because it's a religious matter.
Yeah.
But the reality is that he's a historical figure, and you can examine him as the documents, and you can examine the evidence around this historical figure without discussing what people have attributed to him as being the Son of God, or the religious aspects to him, or what he said himself. That's probably not, the last bit's probably not quite right, because what he said about himself probably may well have got him into trouble. But the long and the short of it is that, I stop at the crucifixion. Who killed him and why? I don't talk about the resurrection. To do that would be to talk about theology. Yeah.
And you'll find, you can't be the first person who's done this type of investigation, surely.
No, there's a couple of hundred years of very erudite scholarship before me.
Are you just reconfirming other findings?
No. Yes, what I do is I go, as you said before, I went around the world. I went to 10 different countries. I spoke to the world's leading historical Jesus experts, and they're all in the documentary.
Bishop Shelby Spong.
Yes, also, Professor Elaine Pagels at Princeton University. We've actually got the Einstein of historical Jesus research in the program. His name is Professor Geza Vermes. He was he's an emeritus professor now from Oxford University. He actually started the third wave of historical Jesus research. So I base my opinions on that sort of quality of analysis. But the very last part of the program is absolutely, I take responsibility for that. And in that, I draw a direct line between the anti-Semitism that I find in the Gospels and the death camps at Auschwitz.
Which is where you end up as well, in Auschwitz.
I didn't expect to end up there, but I did.
Okay. All right. Well, it all will be revealed on Sunday evening on TV1. 24th of July at 8:30 p.m. Bryan, Bruce, thanks so much for your time this morning.
Thanks, Glenn.
Cheers.
Cheers, bye.
It's 18 minutes past 9 here.